Is martial law imminent? Is it something that we would see happen in cities? Yes. I'm going to show you exactly why. I have proof just in my small town what just took place and how they put a curfew in because of a situation, and we'll discuss. But it shows in my little small town how the threat was there, the curfew came, and then all of a sudden a martial law was basically passed. You couldn't go out after certain times. Why? In the name of safety. That's what they're saying. So we're going to talk about this in the context of where we're actually at in our nation and how one little hiccup could cause for a major police state. We'll discuss that and things to prepare for that. Also, we'll talk about judicial coup. If there's a judicial coup going on, I think Trump should just appoint himself to be a district judge. Now, I say that in almost a facetious lingo, but to be honest with you, it's true. What power does a president have when every district judge in these small little towns are holding up the president of the United States? I think this is a bigger problem. You know who could solve it? The Speaker of the House putting something forth to impeach these judges, or the quote-unquote conservative Justice Roberts, which is a joke, by the way. But the Supreme Court should stop it too. They're both choosing not to. Why? Because are they truthfully for this president and changing policy and making America better? That's something we need to talk about. Also, we're going to talk about what RFK just said on the steps of the Capitol. It's kind of unbelievable. He talks about Mr. Gates. Again, our good friend, Mr. Bill Gates. You won't believe what he said about surveillance. You talk about police state or militia state. This represents something that can easily bring that into existence. And then back to AI, going along with what Bill Gates is doing. There's a new report that shows that AI will take over at least half, 50% of all white-collar jobs. And they said it could take over at least 30 to 40% of blue-collar jobs. How do you prepare for that if all of a sudden your income was tight? I mean, there's a new report that shows the housing market is literally fixing to collapse because people can't afford any more of their mortgages. They can't afford their auto loans. Now, this is not a Trump problem. This is actually a problem of people borrowing way more money than they're needing to borrow. Well, if all of a sudden we're in debt up to our eyeballs, all of a sudden we see that AI is taking our jobs. All of a sudden we see that there could be curfews and police states put in because of civil unrest with people trying to get things they need. Boy, are we setting up for fun future. Let's talk about all these things and a few more. This video starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to our channel. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new, we humbly ask that you please subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up if you like the content. Our goal is to talk about things that are happening in our life, things that helps us have a better, wiser, common sense approach to the world we live in. And that's why we're going to talk about my town and talk about how martial law actually easily could be placed in on your city just because of the things that we're dealing with. So let's talk about that first, and then we'll talk about some of the other issues. So I'll tell you what happened in my town. We're a small town. I mean, almost like, I wouldn't say Andy Griffith style town in Mayberry, but a very small town where everybody pretty much knows everybody. It's not a big city whatsoever. We're not close to big cities. Our closest big city would be Jackson, which is still about an hour away. The next two closest would be New Orleans or Baton Rouge, and they're 2 or 3 hours away. So we're not really in an area that is big at all. But we have an interstate that travels through, and we have a train station that travels through. Both that interstate goes from New Orleans to Jackson, so it goes between two big areas. Again, not close to them, but an interstate that travels through. The train goes from New Orleans to Chicago, so we're on the main line of those two thoroughfares. I believe that could cause problems for places like our town because, for instance, our town, we have a chief of police and a sheriff who are, everybody knows them. They're not, of course, they're great people and they want to, make sure our town is safe. But ultimately, they're not some untouchable and someone who that a lot of people are scared of. They're almost like teddy bear figures. And I don't say that to disregard them. I say that because they're part of our community. Well, what we've seen lately in the last probably 4 or 5 weeks, and it's actually been trending in our area on our local news, but not only that, it's actually kind of went off on YouTube. There is two rival gangs in some of the worst parts of town, and is sadly next to our high school because this area is not a good location. And it's cause there's some illegal activity going on there, and a lot of that, they said, is because of the thoroughfares, the interstates, the train depots, and the trafficking issues of illegal drugs. Now, that has happened in most towns and most cities all over. That's why we have a crisis, why they talk about the fentanyl crisis, all that stuff. But what you see now is this causing rivalry in some of these areas. So therefore, we've had a lot of activity of gangs in our town down the road from our main high school. Now, when I say a lot of activity, it's nothing like Chicago or nothing like these big cities, but for my little small town, they had like a shooting the other day. It injured like 6 or 7 and killed 1 at a car wash. I mean, this is literally where kids and youth and high schoolers are next to a church. This is where this is happening. Now, our city and our county can't really handle that because they've never had to handle it. I mean, we're talking, 15, 20 officers for the sheriff's department, 15 to 20 officers for the police department, and they cannot control. It's happening in certain areas of the county where this is prevalent. So what happened in our little town, even though I don't see it, I'm not part of the city, I'm not, I don't go into the city a lot, and even when I do, it's not going in some of these areas, but our city and our mayor, our all board of aldermen, which are made up of Democrats and Republicans, our chief of police, our sheriff, all came together and built a curfew. Now, the curfew doesn't pertain to older adults, but it pertains to anyone with children or anyone under the age of 25 that is not accompanied with an adult or with the church or with some group. Now, a lot of people applaud this because they want to try to get the problem handled. And I agree with that. I think that there should be a problem handled in any city. I mean, I don't want to live in places like Chicago where they have 40 or 50 shootings a week or a weekend. That's crazy. But here's where I want to camp out. The reason this is important for us to understand is because my little town is dealing with a little problem. And it's calls for now the board of aldermen, the mayor, the county, sheriff, and the city police to all say we're going to make a curfew happen. If you're caught outside that curfew and you don't have an excuse, you will be reprimanded, or you'll have a ticket. If they find something on you and they check you, then you could be thrown in jail. And of course, that's not for people like us that are not committing crimes. But what I'm trying to say is they are putting in a new police state or martial law state. Under the state law, it allows it for emergency purposes. This is for something very minuscule and small in my small little town. Now let's blow that up a little bit. If we see this kind of activity because things are not getting handled with cities, schools are not teaching their children, families are breaking down because there's no father in the homes, we have people living on government assistance, and I'm just being honest with you. I'll state it just like what it truthfully is. This is happening in government assistant apartments in our town. This is not happening in the thoroughbred neighborhoods that has a father and mother in the home. It's just not. There's no situation that is even remotely close to that. Every situation this is taking place in is where government entities have paid for these apartments in these areas. Same way with high school. It's right next to the high school because it's, again, in a very rough area. Now, why do I bring this up? It's because this is a problem that I think we're going to see all over. I think we're already seeing it, of course, in the bigger cities, but I think you're going to start seeing it in the smaller cities and towns too, like mine. Why? Because we have allowed for government to give things to people. We were having a discussion at work the other day. I said, I'm so busy, I don't have time to really do things that are what I would consider criminal. Like, I don't understand how people have time to do that. And a guy made a comment, and I thought it was good. He said, well, they have all the time in the world because they're not working. The government's paying for them to be fed and to not work and pretty much sit on their porch. Now, he said that, and this is truth, at that same car wash that I was telling you about. At any point in time, you can drive by there, and there's 30 or 40 middle-aged men who are sitting there drinking and washing cars, and they're idle. Idle hands make for evil hands. Now, what do I mean by that? If we're not busy working, being successful, trying to do something that is productive, then we're going to be reductive. We're going to recess into idle hands. Idle hands make for evil hands, meaning if we're not busy doing productive things, we will regress and fall into temptations, problems, and I think this is what's happening in a lot of these neighborhoods and a lot of these cities. I told you the other day I went to Baton Rouge, didn't have a problem whatsoever. However, on the opposite side of the zoo where we had to get gas, there was literally a car foaming of smoke rolling out, and it's not cigarettes. An officer literally pulled beside him, and I told my wife, I said, he won't do nothing about it. Even though he smells it, I can smell it. It's a faint smell of, illicit drugs. It's not illegal. It's not legal in Louisiana or Mississippi, and he did nothing about it. Why? Because he realized there's no reason to me giving them a ticket that they're just going to be let out. It's two, I'd say, 25-year-old guys not working in a car that drives that had they pay for if they're not working, and the policeman pulled up next to it, saw him, knew what was going on, still walked in the store, did his business, and left. So we have a problem now where we have allowed for crime and for government assistance to cause a problem in our cities, in our towns. And I believe we're going to see this more and more. Now, let me tell you how it affects me. It doesn't. You know why? Because I've prepared. I have locked doors. I have locked windows. I have safety protocols put in. I have cameras. I have, alarms all over my property. I have fencing up. I have gates up. Now, does that make me safe forever? No. But I've prepared for that. So when we talk about securing our home, talking about securing our neighborhoods, making sure we have the things that we need, like food, water, self-defense tools, and all the things like medicines, all those things are very important, because when something like this took place, this was something that no one saw. All of a sudden, the last week, bam, 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 closed it down, the weekend shut down. Now we are under curfew for the whole week. That happened in a split second. Now, we saw problems happening. Crime happens all over all our towns and cities, but it was not so prevalent till all of a sudden this last weekend, Memorial Day weekend, everything went crazy. They shut the town down. If that took place, are you ready for martial law or police state? Are you ready for curfews? Storms bring in curfews. Unrest bring in curfews. Riots bring in curfews. All that brings in curfews. Curfews are a form of martial law. Be ready for that. Understand that. Now, say on a bigger scale, things are happening. Look at the judicial coup, and that's why we're going to talk about this too. The judicial coup is causing for more animosity and more polarization, because you have district judges who is basically overstepping law and overstepping the president. No matter what you say, you cannot tell me that 77 million people elected a man to do the tariffs, to do the no men and women sports, no women and men sports, to do the tax savings for people, to do the Doge fraud investigations, and you cannot tell me a district judge from this little region all across America can stop the president of the United States. If that's the case, Trump should just appoint himself to be a district judge and pretty much do all the rules that he wants to do, and enforce tariffs, enforce the military to do this, because if they can stop all that, then they can start it all. So you might as well allow President Trump to appoint himself to be a district judge. It's pathetic, isn't it? Now, here's the problem. The judicial coup should be worried about our towns, keeping our city safe, getting the criminals off the street, making sure that we're not giving fraudulent money, like Doge is saying, to all these situations. There was a lady that was busted in a city, and again, you can go back and do the research. I think it was in New York. What she was doing was she and like 4 of her friends were over the the unemployment benefit program, and they had like fraudulently taken millions of dollars from this food bank. They're not in jail, are they? We talk about all the waste, fraud, and abuse, and not one person has been arrested. Arrests need to be made. So the judicial branch needs to worry about arresting and interpreting the law, seeing the people breaking the law, and put them in jail, instead of worrying about what the president's doing that has no basis on actually harming Americans, like we're seeing harming Americans in the American cities today. The reason we're in martial law or police state is because our county and our city officials don't know what to do, and then when they do arrest someone, they just get put back on the street because the judicial branch is not doing what they're supposed to do. Because the prisons are too full, the jails are too full, we don't have enough room, we don't have enough time, we can't take care of them all. Isn't it amazing how we allow justices and law, and you would think the judicial branch to keep us safe by making sure the people that are committing the crimes, put them in jails to be where we don't have to worry about the dangers of it, and instead we allow for waste, fraud, and abuse to take place. We allow for things to happen, and we see our judicial branch worried more about what President Trump is doing after he's promised it for years upon years, and then 77 million people backed it to happen. Do you realize President Trump's approval rating right now is 53%? Do you realize the Supreme Court and the Congress's approval ratings are in the 20s? So you tell me who actually is leading by example and leading correctly and actually doing what he says to do. It is the Trump administration. So when we see this judicial coup, they're worried too much about the president, not worried actually about our towns, and therefore you see things like what's happening in my city and my town happening. Think of Chicago. I look at Chicago all the time. You have a leader who literally is against a race, against white people. He is literally he said he's literally putting more African Americans in power and his friends in power because he believes they're going to do a better job than white people. And if you had that from the opposite side, that would be, they would be thrown in jail. Not only that, there is literally like 25 to 50 shootings a weekend in Chicago. We wonder why that's happening. It's because I imagine if you look back to it, how much of this problem is not happening in the neighborhoods where people are working and father and mothers in homes. It's happening in these areas where the government gave assistance. The government gives them everything they need, and the government is subsidizing a lifestyle where they don't have to work, and the men are sitting literally on the streets doing things with their idle hands, which make for evil hands. We just got to be honest about this. The reason we're going to see martial law and civil unrest, the polarization with the judicial coup and what it's causing, literally Elon Musk is the richest man in the world who was a darling of the left, came in to support not really President Trump's full push, but just wanting people to quit wasting our tax dollars, and then he became hated. His car companies got vandalized. Literally, there's 13 states right now trying to throw him in jail. Attorney generals from those states, judicial coups, basically in those states that are trying to throw Elon Musk in jail for helping get rid of fraud. I kid you not. And instead of worrying about Elon and Trump, they should be worried about our cities and towns. But no, what we're doing is we're going to allow our cities and towns fall to pieces, and then all of a sudden civil unrest is going to take place, and all of a sudden police state starts. And what do we talk about? You better make sure that your home is prepared and that you have everything you need, because it can happen just like it happened in my town within literally one night. It went to a second night, and then martial law came in. Or they call it a curfew for safety. But really what it is a police state. And as if a police state is not enough, I want you to listen to what was shared by RFK. RFK says Bill Gates plans to launch a low-orbiting satellite that will be used for surveillance in populations of 24/7. RFK, this is a direct quote, it says, "We're going to see 415,000 low-orbit satellites. Bill Gates says his 65,000 satellites alone will be able to look at every square inch of the planet 24 hours a day." So his goal right now in his initiative is not only to own our farmland, not only to make sure these things are going in our arm, now he's putting 65,000 low-orbit satellites to where he can be completely in control of surveillance in America. I saw where Meta and Anduril is a self-defense company, and it's AI technology, and Palmer Luckey, who tends to lean, even though he says liberal, but he tends to lead for American First policies. And that, I think of Mark Zuckerberg, who's trying to become a Trump guy, but really ultimately I don't think you can trust him. Them two just teamed up to build a virtual reality system so militaries and people can get a better feel for safety and security of America. See, and it's for our military. Now, when I hear about this, and I hear that Palantir is now joining to get waste, fraud, and abuse out, they're using AI capabilities to be more into our government to make sure that we are safely not having fraud in Medicare, Medicaid. That all sounds good. But what we just said with Bill Gates, what we just said with Anduril and Meta, what we just said with Palantir, not that some of those things can be used for good, like we talk about with AI, and we're supposed to talk about a story with AI, but all those things is we're allowing for more surveillance and more overreach into our lives. Now, do I want to stop the waste, fraud, and abuse? Yes, we just basically did that with Doge. Doge literally found waste, fraud, and abuse in all these entities, and not one thing's been done about it. So now we want to bring in AI technology and technicians that are subcontracted, self-defense contractors, along with Meta and Bill Gates, and we want to bring them in to do the same thing that Doge did, and then we didn't codify Doge's cuts, and they're looking for surveilling us. What are we going to get out of it? What actually do we get out of it other than really eagle eye? Dystopian futures to where they could surveil every situation. It's not about safety and security and Doge cutting and saving money. We just tried that. It didn't work. We can't even get Congress to vote on it. Mike Johnson came out and said he's going to vote on $9.4 billion Doge cuts. It makes me even more madder that he says he wants to cut $9.4 billion like it's a big deal. $9.4 billion? When we literally found so far upwards of $500 billion worth of waste on the Doge calculator, and he just wants to cut $9.4 billion while he's trying to pass a bill that is going to add trillions to our debt. He wants to cut $9.4 billion, and he wants you to applaud him for finding $9.4 billion worth of cuts. While Elon Musk said we can ultimately cut 200 or 300 billion with a stroke of a pen, he wants to just cut only $9.4 billion. It shows that they're not working for you. So now we talked judicial coup. We talked Congress not actually codifying, the cuts. Judicial people are not worried about our towns and cities. They're actually worried about stopping Trump and RFK and Elon. But then we give access to Bill Gates for 65,000 satellites. We see Meta and Android working together, and we have Palantir, an AI company based in self-defense, and Overwatch going in to find more waste, fraud, abuse, and Medicare and Medicaid. Now help me understand why we're allowing all this extra surveillance, all this overreach, if we're not going to do anything with truly cutting with the waste, fraud, and abuse or arrests being made. No arrest from Doge is happening. No fraud has been taken out. So if you want my opinion, until we see arrest and until we see cuts, I don't want anyone in our business. Because what we've realized is they're not doing anything to actually help us. I mean, again, I think Trump should appoint himself a district judge, so therefore he can actually make policy on all this, huh? I say that facetiously. But truthfully, it's sad that we've allowed these justices, I mean, literally, we've allowed this judicial coup to not protect our cities, but to allow fraudulent payments to people like Harvard, to allow fraudulent payments to illegal immigrants, to allow fraudulence to USAID, which is basically funding bad things across the world, to allow fraudulent payments to this, and actually cause harm for the taxpayer. And we just take it. It's making a polarization which will make for unrest, which will make for more surveillance state, which will make for more police state to come in and make curfews. Do you see how this is all tied together? Now you can say, Colby, you're just a conspiracy theorist. You're wearing your tinfoil hat. None of this even matters. Market's doing great. Everybody's happy. What you're seeing is, and what I've talked about the last few days, the war on the homestead, the war on the homeschooler, the war on the farmer, the war on Christianity. All those things I've talked about the last 3 days. Go back and watch every one of those videos. And then all of a sudden we're talking about the war on the presidency where the judicial coup is on, the war on waste, fraud, and abuse. They're allowing for waste, fraud, and abuse to keep on happening, and the war on our cities because our judiciary is worried more about taking care of getting rid of the executive branch and taking their powers versus keeping our cities safe. And it's making for a major polarization between the right and the left. We're in a very, very sad spot. And I believe this is where we come in and say, okay, you better make sure you have your house in order. You better make sure that you have out of debts, because the housing market right now, there's a new story, and I want to read the article. This is a snippet from Bloomberg. It says the U.S. housing market has nearly 500,000 more sellers than buyers, the most on record. This will likely cause for home prices to fall, which they need to fall, don't get me wrong, but listen to this. It says Redfin reported that 34% of sellers in the markets there's 34% more sellers than the markets than buyers, meaning people are upside down and trying to get out of their homes because they cannot afford them anymore. At no other point in history have we seen this kind of problem, even down to the housing market crisis. It says there is an estimated 1.9 million homes for sale. There's over 1.9 million home sellers in the United States, and there's only 1.5 million home buyers. So the problem is not we don't have enough homes. The problem is we've inflated the home so much, just like we've inflated the car so much, just like we've inflated our whole cost of living so much, that it's actually causing people to struggle. You know why? It's not a Trump thing. It's actually the last 50 years of Congress spending. So when Mike Johnson wants to cut $9.4 billion, it's almost laughable. Don't give him a pass. He needs to cut $900 billion. We're $2 trillion every year in a deficit, meaning we're overspending $2 trillion a year. That's not counting the $36 trillion we already have in debt. So let's kind of tie all this in. We're in worse financial troubles than we've ever been in our nation. We have towns for our safety and security that are locking down because our judiciary is not locking bad players up, and because we're still giving tons of money and tons of our tax dollars to people to sit at home, to not actually build families up, to benefit worse areas because they're getting more government assistance. We're seeing problems. So instead of the judiciary solving these problems, we see unrest in the streets. The unrest in the streets is making for curfews like is happening in my town. Curfews make for martial law, which now comes into the fact that Bill Gates, Andrew, and Palantir are all building more surveillance mechanisms to where they can monitor all the world. Literally, Bill Gates' quote, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I can monitor every square inch of the globe. Is this really what we wanted? Now here's what I want to say, and this is where I think that we're going to see civil unrest very, very soon. 77 million people voted for Trump, not for all these other things. 77 million people, along with the other hundreds of millions of people in America, are literally getting a taste of how bad it can get, especially when we don't have good leadership. Now, that has nothing to do with Trump being leader. It has to do with the fact that we have a Supreme Court not actually doing their job, a Congress not actually doing their job, judicial overstepping their job, and we have a president who is getting his hands tied. You talking about a bureaucratic state, and you talking about a really deep state, we're there. And they're going to use the surveillance that's coming in. They're going to use the police state that we've talked about. They're going to use overreach to pretty much control us. Don't let him. The war has been on the farm, the homestead, the homeschool, the independent, the Christian, the conservative. I've literally hashed that out in every video over the last 3 or 4 videos. Do not miss that the war is not over. And for you as a conservative, you as someone who wants freedom, you as a libertarian, you as someone who's a populist, even if you're a liberal, not a leftist, but a liberal, where you want more freedom for everything, bottom line is your rights are going to be taken away because of the things that we talked about in today's video and the last few days. Pay attention. It's said that our president cannot do, he has less power than a district judge that no one voted for. It's pathetic. Guys, let me know your thoughts on today's video. God bless.